All right, good afternoon, everyone. Good morning, those in the western part of Canada. So, for these next two webinars, we're going to be focusing on procurement. And as the title says, how to get better value when you buy products and services. This topic is it's a very difficult topic to give in the sense of, so if you're going to take the course privately through oh, I got to make sure I mute somebody here and getting if you're going to take the course privately, there are procurement certificates. So for example, there's a national education consulting, they give a course on procurement, and it's 95 hours of training, and you end up getting a certificate in public sector procurement program certificates. And there's a number of colleges and university offer online courses, probably about the same 100 hours of courses. Some then require examinations. It's a really, I believe it's a really good field to be in. There's a high demand for people who understand procurement because you have to be extremely picky and really become knowing all the rules associated with procurement. So if anybody's interested in like logistics or procurement, it pays extremely well, and I think it's a really good occupation. So what we tried to do is take all this information on procurement, which is like, hundreds of pages of manuals, and we developed a series of booklets, which basically boils it down to the nuts and bolts of what people need to know about procurement. If you go to our website, FNNBOA.ca, you will find that we have developed a series of booklets. And this is the logo you will see. So if you're on the front page, go to the very bottom, you're going to see procurement. You click on it and you get this infographic. And the infographic represents the 9 various books. So the first one is Introduction to Procurement. The second one is Construction and Procurement. The third one is the roles, responsibilities, construction documents, and construction contracts, which is a bit of our focus on our webinars. Pre-contract phase, preparing the bids. Contracting phases is book 5, book 6, contract administration phase. 7, post-contract phase. 8 is guides and resources. So this is where you will find, we think, really good examples of procurement policies. So no need to develop your own procurement policy. You click on book 8 and there should be some really good guides that you can download as references. And then number 9 is, terms and conditions and references and definitions. It gets a little legal beagly, so we put that on number back on 9. But many of those terms do come up in contracts and how to what the meanings are. So basically, what I'm going to do today is focus a little bit on overview on procurement, and then we'll touch upon how to do pre-tenders under our procurement. Again, we're only taking a very small snippet of the procurement process, which we took that snippet for the webinars because we know that that's the big challenge for a lot of the communities. So what do we talk about in procurement? It's terms used to describe the process of buying products or services. And procurement includes many things, and we do procurement ourselves. So if we, going to go buy a vehicle, we look at who's got the better price, the better value. So if you look in terms of First Nation communities, you can see what some of the topics that should be procured. Kitchen appliances, do you buy all your fridges from the same company? Do you put up for tender? Do you buy in lots of that? For example, do you buy 10 refrigerators at a time or one? Building tools, materials, construction equipment, prefabs, homes, we put fire extinguishers, but also procurement includes procuring services. So for example, how many people procure their insurance policies? You go year in, year after year to the same insurance company, or do you say, wait a minute, we want to put this out to tender. We want to see if we can get better value in terms of services, in terms of cost. So, you can look at water projects, delivering of water, architectural designs, delivery services. So some communities and some companies say anything over a value of, let's say, $5,000 has to be tendered. And I say $5,000 because that's generally the cutoff point where people believe that there's enough at stake out of 5,000 or more value that you want to put out to tender and say, okay, who can give us the best value? So why is procurement so important? Well, basically, it impacts the community. It impacts your finances, the well-being of the community, the housing, the infrastructure. It all ties into how you purchase your products. So for example, in financing, we know that if you do not procure documents, you generally pay or could be paying a higher price. You could be paying a higher services more than you planned. You can be getting really poor quality. So if you go after lower price, you may not be getting the value which you're looking for. And also you're buying and probably buying other items that you don't really need, such as, you need a box of widgets, or you need this type of air conditioner, or you need this type of furnace, or if you get the furnace, you need X and Y. So you might be buying items that you do not necessarily need. And so procurement, if you look at it, one person will say, oh, well, you need to put, so for example, on your furnace, a humidifier, and others are saying, no, you don't need a humidifier. So then all of a sudden, why is one person suggesting X and the other person not suggesting Y? In terms of housing, if proper procurement are not followed, it has a negative impact because you're basically could be building homes that don't match your community climate. So how many times do we know, and when we talk to communities or we're at presentations, what we hear is that, well, we built this home, but they shipped us windows that don't work. Well, what windows did you get? So we raised a question. Well, we got windows. We didn't provide any specifications, so we end up getting windows that are, used for, in each part of the world, Sarnia or Mississauga, but they're not, the R values which should have been purchased for the northern climates. Building materials don't match the current home. So are you buying, vinyl, which basically cracks, or are you really using hardy board, which will give you a better, a more sturdier or a steel roof versus 25-year shingles? Again, the quality of building products may not match your home. So are you basically buying products? So if you don't put out to procurement, you may, or provide specifications, you may not be purchasing items that are meeting your housing needs. And we've raised this as part of our discussions that in many cases people are building homes based on products and supplies that are not conducive to those communities. So what we want to do today is we want to try to identify how to select contractors. Generally, this is like a 2 or 3 or 4 day course. We're going to try to wrap it up in a few minutes, but at least give enough idea of some of the items that you might want to look forward to. And again, most of our topics are coming from the books. So generally today we're focusing on books 3, 4, and 5, which are online. And I believe Claude sent those out to everybody as well. So pre-tender survey. So one of the questions that we raise is, why do communities only use the same, company? Why do they use the same person all the time? And what we hear is, well, we're in a remote area, this is the best we can get, or, we've always done it that way. So what happens under procurement is, you need to try to figure out how you're going to proceed over the next several months. So we call this the pre-tender survey. So activities prior to the tender or awarding of contracts. So for example, we know that many people in the north have to have shipments by winter road. So if your winter roads come into effect in, let's say, January, you have to back up to make sure you get the tender, get the equipment up. If you're into a rainy season, if you're into a time where I know some communities, they spend time hunting and gathering in the fall, and usually there's 2-3 weeks there. So, you have to take into some account of your processes before you go out. So basically, as part of the pre-tender survey, you want to identify the conditions that you're going to face before you even put it out to anyone to say, we're thinking of building these buildings. So for example, I have here, soil reports or testing. If you need to have a soil engineer in and you're planning to build, they can do the soil testing before it even goes out to tender. And so you can get that done in advance. The next one is defining capable bidders. I don't know how many communities do this. I don't think, I can maybe think of only a couple. That is to provide pre-qualifications of bidders. So what happens is, if you, and again, I know that the flow is based on money you receive from ISC or CMHC, but if you know, for example, that you're putting a proposal together for April 1st, 2021, and you're extremely optimistic that you're going to get monies to build 5 houses, there's nothing stopping a community from doing a pre-qualification of a bidder now. So what that involves is that you want to qualify bidders that will meet the, that can build the homes. You want to have some idea, are they really capable? Can they provide the construction to build? What we're looking at here is basically being proactive and going out and reaching out to see who can actually deliver and build the homes. And again, you're sort of managing your risk at the same time, because if you do a pre-qualified bidder, and then when you actually launch the tender, you know exactly that these people, these 5 or 6 contractors or these 2 contractors, you've already identified that they meet your risk factors, such as they have the bonding, they have the proper insurance, they have the equipment, they're going to build capacity in the communities, they're going to provide training. So through your through the pre-qualifying bidder, this gives you an opportunity to have alternative people building your homes. So how do you find the contractors? So one is to post a request for pre-qualifications. Some call them expression of interest. So on your website for the community, you would have under there, contracts or proposals. And on your website, you would publish what's called an expression of interest. It could be anywhere from 3 to 5 pages, and the expression of interest would be state that you are planning to build, several homes. You don't have to put the price point in there, but you can say we're planning to build for March. These are the homes we're looking at. You can actually provide specifications. If you already know what your homes are, you can provide those in advance. But what you're looking for is to see if you can get bidders are saying, yeah, I'm going to be free and I want to come to that community to work with that community. So I can plan as a contractor, I'm going to put my name in for that expression of interest because I would like to tender that. And I believe as a contractor, I can provide better services. So a number of ways you can do it on your website. You can advertise in the local paper. You can run them through Construction Association of Rural Manitoba. So for example, you can, if you're a member, I believe, you can post that tender. So basically what you're looking at is you're trying to provide, fairness. You're trying to be objective. You want to reach out to find out who, in fact, wants to work with the community. And can we get more than one contractor? Because if you get more than one contractor, you want to make sure then you can set up a proper bid. So rather than using the same contractor over and over, a pre-qualification will allow you to reach out to find out who is really out there that can help build the homes based upon the criteria that you would use. Right, there we go. So what would be a typical request for a pre-qualification? Well, you put a closing date. So you can say closing date would be, December 31st. So you give them time to prepare. You have to put a closing time, say that it has to be in the office of, the procurement officer or the housing manager by 5 o'clock. It could be delivered by fax, or you can deliver by email, or you can deliver it, by courier. You have to define how you want it delivered. Do you want hard copies, or do you only want PDF versions? And again, what happens more and more now are only asking for PDF versions. Some are actually asking for a hard copy as the backup document in case there's any dispute. Or you can ask for a PDF version that's actually blocked so that you can't make any changes. You want the address on it, and you want to specify the closing requirements, such as the owner supplies or envelopes, a number of copies, how you want to submit it. So you get to identify exactly how you want to receive the expression of it, how you want the contractors to respond to the expression of interest. So here's an example of a pre-qualifying. So you can see the bid is for construction. You have a bid number. You can, this one here, it's pre-qualification of general contractors for a water source recovery facility. It's bid status, it's open to anybody. But once awarded, you would put in awarded rather than open to be awarded. The bidding times, you can see the closing, the time frames, negotiation, you refer to the document, English, hard copy. So this one here wants hard copies only. And it gives exactly where you want it to be sent to. And there's this one, public opening is sort of open to the public. No, you're doing pre-qualification. So once it's pre-qualified, only those that pre-qualify can actually tender it. So if somebody wants to do the work, they have to submit to pre-qualifications. And if somebody says, oh, I didn't see your pre-qualification, but I want to do the work, well, you would have to take their name for next time. So that would exclude them. Again, that's just more the description that you would put in. And you just give a read. It's basically, what you're planning to do. This one is open to all respondents to be qualified, and this one here, they want the respondent must submit their own name, qualification to perform their role at least one of the subcontractors. So if they're hiring subcontractors, you want to know who they will be as part of that tender. You can see the queries, so generally queries are really interesting. So when you put out a pre-tender, you're going to get questions. And so you would ask that these questions are provided in writing, and that you would post the questions back up on the bidding document. So if one person asks a question, you would have to share that with everybody else that you sent the email to make sure it's fair and objective as part of your process. So you just can't. So if one contract says, "Well, tell me about X," well, you can tell them in writing, but you have to share that with everybody. So pre-qualification criteria. You want the contractor to submit their credentials and abilities to perform their work that's going to be qualified. And generally, there's two important criteria. One is going to be your mandatory, and the second is going to be your evaluative. So let's look at what does the mandatory requirements mean. So under your mandatory, there is no exceptions to the rules that you will put out. You will say that all the contractors must have these following criteria. So for example, bonding verification, bonding limits. You want to make sure they can get a bond. You want to make sure they have insurance. You want a bank reference in terms of the banking that they use. You want to make sure that they have workers' compensation certificates. The other one, the contractor's qualification statements, experience, their legal structure, their past projects. Again, if the CCD C11, we're talking about that more, that's used for procurement specification requirements, and that will be one of the requirements that you ask for. We're talking about that more later. The experience working directly in Indigenous communities. You want to know how many projects they have done in the past, how well that's went. You can add more in there, such as how much will they provide training to community members, and how that training, how many people will they hire and who they hire. Are they going to hire framers? Are they going to hire people for landscaping or wiring? So you can put that as a mandatory requirement. But at the end of the day, the contractor must meet all the mandatory requirements. If he fails to meet any of the mandatories, their submission is rejected. So some of the evaluative requirements, and again, experience, value of completed work, value of work currently underway, like how many projects do they have. So you don't want you want somebody who's got the experience, but you don't want a contractor that is so busy that when it comes to do your place, you're going to say, well, sorry, I can't make it till April, but our first opportunity is August. And that's not really good for anybody. You want details of similar projects. You want resumes of the key personnel. You want their organization structure, their resources, approach their construction, how to do quality control, a list of their sub-trades, for example, you would want. Safety qualifications. Are they, how many people get injured? Most definitely, you want references. Membership affiliations. Are they part of the provincial construction associations, or, and again, job creation by hiring local community members. Are they Are they reputable in the sense of, yes, they provide training to the community members, and they help them in terms of providing resource and training. So how to get the best contractors? Well, under the contracting phrase, there's 4 key areas. So one is the tender evaluation. So here what's happened is we have a pre-qualification, they pre-qualified, and now you're looking at, you have a list of 5 or 6 contractors, and you want to send them a tender, and you now want these 5 to actually respond in terms of their costing. So how do we do that? You want to do a tender evaluation. 2, you want to select the bidder. 3, alternatives and substitutions. And 4, issue a purchase order. Now, you need to go, again, this really gets much longer in terms of amount of time. So book 5, we go into more details under the tender evaluations. Claude, do you have anything to add at this stage?
No, that's pretty much an overview of it, but certainly there's more detail in the book, much more.
An important detail.
Certainly.
Yeah. So under the tender evaluation, and I can't remember that, I'm just checking here, if we shorten the contractors. No, we didn't. So one of the challenges that happens is when a lot of the communities put out a tender, they do not provide really clear specifications. And so, for example, if you're building with, in a northern climate, you would want to specifically state the type of windows you want installed. You don't want the window from Mississauga. You want the one that have a higher R value. You want the better door. You want the better, materials that are going to meet the climate. Now, we are in the process of developing what's called a Northern Housing Guide, and it's basically could be used for any community in the Northern Ontario, Northern Saskatchewan. And in that Northern Guide, we're suggesting a number of specifications for purchasing, doors and windows and insulation value and roofing and foundation and insulation. So we're providing a number of specifications which could actually be used in your tenders on this is the information that you want. So writing up a tender evaluation is really important because you have to provide all your building specification. And again, that's a whole entire webinar by itself, which we didn't go at this stage because we just want to provide an overview on procurement. But, writing up a tender is extremely important because that's what people are going to respond to. So generally, what happens under once you get the tender, you receive it. We call this area professional courtesy. So what happens is, during the tendering process, people are going to want to know what's happening. People who did not meet the pre-qualifications, or people who withdraw, or people who do not win the tenders, they want to know why they did not qualify. I know myself, working as a consultant, you spend weeks putting in a tender, and if you get second or third or fifth, it doesn't matter, you didn't win it. And it's important to know why you did not win a proposal. So for example, it may not necessarily be price, but you just thought that maybe, the materials that they were substituting weren't meeting the needs. Or it could be that, their references weren't that strong, or they missed some information, or they didn't submit. You've asked for certain information and it wasn't submitted. So it's important to provide a list of to people are pre-qualified, or even those that win a contract. And again, also have to do that at the same time, respecting the privacy and confidentiality of all the other people, which is also very important. So we're going to switch a little bit over to contract management. So this is in book 3. And under this topic, what I want to talk about here is, managing the contract, getting the contracts out. So basically, I think the big issue, which keeps on coming, which is more important these days, is the council is the authority having jurisdiction. They're ultimately responsible for how those homes are built in communities, and they're ultimately responsible for the safety of the members. And what's happening if homes are not being built properly, or if there's contract mismanagement, you get into legal issues. So it's really important the contract management is done, at the highest level. The big no-no, which happens in a lot of communities, is that they usually use the contract provided by the contractor, and that you never, ever, ever use the contract provided by the contractor. We know of many situations where a contractor, a First Nation uses a contractor's contract, and in there, they cannot sue the contractor. They have 48 hours to sue the contractor. So it's never to the advantage of the community or to the council if you use a contractor's contract. So we know, for example, an issue a number of years ago, First Nation community received a number of prefab homes. So this was delivered in February, and by the time they unwrapped and got the plastic, I think it was February, March, and it was end of April. And when they sort of unwrapped all the information, it was black all inside. And they called the person who unwrapped, said, "We don't understand why you guys painted black inside." And the inspector who went there said that this is not black, it's mold. And so they used, whatever, it was wet plywood, it got leakage, it got hot. Anyway, it formed mold inside many of these units. Matter of fact, I believe all the units. So when they took the contract and they went to talk to their lawyer, in there, they had something like, 30 days to, talk to the contractor and to do any legal remediation. And in this case, the contractor walked because they signed the contract, and a lot of those prefabs, I think there were about a half a dozen, they couldn't use them because of the mold. So they were building 6 homes. I believe they could not use any of the information or any of the materials. So our suggestion is to have a contract that is prepared by the council. And in our book, we actually provide some really good examples of contracts that should be used. Claude, the CCDC has a contract. We referenced it, didn't we?
Yes, the CCDC is Canadian Construction Document Canada. It's a large number of documents that have been we'll say time tested for, I'm going to say probably close to 40, 50 years in the construction industry. So they've been around for a long time. They've been fine tuned, and they're kind of the go-to, we'll call it templates for construction contracts in general, just depending on the type of contract you want to deal with.
Yes, and there's the reference right there. Yeah, easy to use. And if you click on that link, which will send it out, they have a number of documents. And I guess the key issue is to have any contracts reviewed by the council, legal counsel, to make sure that you're protected. So, for example, in your contract, you should have a suggestion is that community should have a holdback of 90 days on final payment. And 90 days on final payment, yeah, you pay them, 1% or 2% on the final, because new homes are not covered under any of the provincial warranty programs, but there's nothing stopping the communities to establish your own warranty program by doing a 10% holdback and pay them interest of 1 or 2%, but at least you have some recourse or some remedies if you see any problems. So in short, the chiefs and councils, they hold the trump card. It's important that they exercise that to their best abilities, and it's not to be not to use what the contractors give you. Notwithstanding, it could be a very strong legal contract, but all councils should use, all chiefs and councils should use their own legal counsels to design contracts. The another area that we found in terms of procurement is what's really required in terms of construction documentation. So usually there's a number of documents which are to move any construction projects forward. So for example, ones that should be there in a file would be the written agreement signed by all parties to contracts, a clear statement of work, the scope of work, because what happens then, if you don't have a clear statement of work of what's being provided, then you start getting into change orders and the project starts moving. So that statement of work has to be clearly upfront. There's a standard form for the general conditions. That is, for example, who cleans up the yards? How do you dispose of yard waste? How do you dispose of construction waste? So who does that? So again, special supplementary conditions. So for example, who is responsible for shipping of the other products? So one of the issues that happens is that a prefab is delivered to the community and it sits there because then there's not a clear understanding of, well, actually then who puts the home onto the foundation? Is it the community or is it the contractors? This happens, unfortunately, my understanding, a lot where it's not clear on who is doing what. So bid quantities depends on the types of contracts. It would be, who's involved, the number of bidders. The technical specifications, again, this is exactly what you're expecting in terms of the delivery. This is based on National Building Code or other standards, or is it code plus more? So they know as part of the tendering document that that's what they're delivering. The working construction drawings. One of the key issues is having drawings that have been signed off and having this available, so everybody is always looking at the same drawings. Usually what happens, many of these documents, they're actually put in plastic sheets because they're always being referenced. The other one is the construction schedule, proposed or anticipated. You don't want, if you're going to start in April, is the person going to be done by July? So you want to know how and when these homes are going to be built. And of course, the other key document is insurance or bonds if required. And another document you can include in there would be workers' compensation certificates and other types of insurance. So as part of the procurement, we're going to sort of like jump in a little bit to, what to do once a contract is started. So so we're basically looking at book 6 on our procurement levels. So here we talk about some, project management, issuing contract amendments. This can be quite contentious because you might get a lot of change orders, and are the change orders really important? 3, monitor progress. Generally, this is done through, series of inspections. So this is where the building inspector is extremely critical to make sure that the homes being built are meeting both National Building Code specifications, but also meet the specifications as provided in the spec document. Follow up on the delivery, if they were supposed to have fridges installed, was it the right fridge? Administration progress payments, CMHC, people know that this is very familiar, making progress payments based upon inspection progress. So there should be a close link between inspection processes and progress payments. Then the last one we talk about, or second last, is complete financial audit. It's really important to make sure all the monies was spent properly. And again, claims and disputes. We talk about use of dispute resolutions. You don't try not to go to court, but if you get disputes and claims, it can get extremely costly for everybody. You want to avoid claims and disputes, and if it's properly managed, you should not be having any claims and disputes. So our book 6 on our series goes into more detail on how these activities would be carried out. What to do to complete the contract. And again, very few communities actually follow up in terms of this processes. I know that the requirements by ISC and CMHC requires some of these proportions, but generally it's file a final action. So you want to make sure that on your final payment, there's no claims, everything is clear, there's no leftovers, the yard, the landscaping's done. Return the performance bonds. You want to close it out. You want to make sure you can return any of the key documents back. Ensure completeness and accuracy of the file documents. Make sure all the papers you need to submit to ISC or to CMHC or to the bank. Any warranty, for example, documents are handed to the homeowners or the home occupants. And the last one is to make sure that you reconcile with the budgets. That in fact, that you planned to pay X, you had some overruns, but they were all covered. So that's just a quick overview on contract management. Like I said, this is usually a several week course on these highlight points. We try to put these through the booklets that we developed. If you go to the booklets, there's always all these links that will help you to get better information. Chloe, you got anything to add on that opening stuff?
No, I think you pretty much provided a really good overview. Certainly going back and taking a good read of the booklets will really fill in a lot of the gaps. I think it was well covered.
So the big one is the CCDC documents, and I'll go back to that link. So this link is really, I think, important for a lot of people. It has sample contracts, sample documents. It also has sample tenders, I believe, of how to put those out. I know one of the gaps that exists out there in many of the communities, especially the smaller communities, is you will have a person trying to do a tender who's not an engineer, who's not an inspector, and we know that there's a gap out there. So our suggestions would be is if you're going to build, any home, you may want to consider having an engineering firm or an architect firm and pay them to project manage the technical side, and that's including taking and writing the proper tenders, because flawed tenders is going to be extremely expensive for the communities, especially if a person comes in and says, oh, you want, these light boxes, that's going to cost you $200. And you're at the mercy of the contractor, you have to pay it. So if you can, I highly suggest to use, somebody near the community or who's worked with the community to write the tenders, because they're becoming more and more important. And we know that contractors, we get called by contractors saying, this community wants to build 5 homes. And the first question they ask is, how do we get building permits? And then you explain to them there's no building permits. And then the contractor says, well, then how do you build? So because somebody who works off reserve knows all the protocols, all the responsibilities, and then all of a sudden they go on reserve, and it becomes a different dynamic for them. As a matter of fact, some of the contractors we have talked to get really skittish, and they say, I'm not sure if we want to work in that climate, because there's too much uncertainty, and that they're really busy and they don't need to work. So you lose an opportunity of a contractor not possibly doing work for you, and probably losing a good contractor. So that is really important. And again, I'm just going back, just highlighting this, the big one, never ever use a contractor's contract. So that will sum up before my voice ties up. Claude, any final remarks?
Well, just back to the CCDC documents, certainly they're really good templates. What you can do is basically take the template and modify it to suit your need, your community, basically what your requirements would be. But certainly they're very good, very detailed information is provided. And certainly not every little article or clause within those documents would apply. So like I say, once you've created something that satisfies your own community, then certainly it's just a modification of that CCDC document. They have it on very, very different types of documents too, because once you get into contracts, we can talk about cost plus or fixed fee. We can talk about where you're buying things in bulk, and where John was saying earlier, quantities would be important. But what happens if you need more of or less than? So again, these documents will cover these things just depending on which one you're actually going to work with in the actual project and requirement that needs to be satisfied. So yeah, a good reference point, certainly.
Yeah, and another suggestion is if you're going to do a tender, you might want to try to share it with, somebody within to say, does this make sense? Are we missing any gaps? And again, if you get somebody just to look at those documents, they might be able to point out some things that are missing or should be included. Because again, one of the challenges that we see is contractors voicing concerns over, weak tendering documents that they're trying to respond to.
I think Rasika has a question, comment.
Well, I just had a couple of comments. So, firstly, thank you for this session. And TFN has been using CCDC contracts, as well as we have our own request for proposal and request for qualification type of documents that we use. Recently, for one of the projects, like we do use BC Bid or other platforms to advertise, as well as the website and all that is identified here. Recently, for one of the projects, we got 21 proposals from professional architectural teams, and internally we have to go through a very elaborate evaluation criteria, as well as sort of a review and shortlisting process to be fair to everybody who had put in the time and effort to submit a proposal. And of course, backing up a little bit, even before that, request for qualification, the whole process was divided into 2 steps. So there was a request for qualification, as well as followed up by a request for proposal. And the request for qualifications received an overwhelming response of 21 proposals. So we had to go through a very, like I said, elaborate evaluation criteria, and then shortlist 5, and then shortlist 3. And then those 3 were sent a request for proposal by invitation. And of course, in all these documents, the scope, so the work plan, the scope, the timeline, all that was sort of identified, very clearly. There is no ambiguity, and there is a good understanding for the proponents to be able to give a competitive bid in a way. And then so that's like before the project basically starts the designing phase, and basically to have a professional team do the designing. And then once all the designing and approval is completed, then of course the construction tendering and project managing, which is the other part. And a lot of these, I think, these projects can be sort of divided very clearly into schematic design phase, and then go into detailed design and the tendering and project managing during construction. So I think it's a very elaborate process.
How many months did it take you to go from 21 down to 3? Couple weeks?
Oh no, it wasn't that long. It was hardly. Well, this is a very it's a prioritized project by the chief and executive council. So it didn't go through like hardly less than a month, I would say. But basically, the process, meaning the advertising. If you're asking me, are you asking me right from the beginning of drafting the RFQ to the end of actually giving an award to the final proponent? Is that what you're
Yeah, that'd be interesting. How long that take?
I would say maybe like probably 3 months. I have to actually go back and look at the dates, but the idea is to give enough time to, because there were some revisions, and the final version was actually advertised on BC Bid, and then it had to be it had to go through some timeline so that the proponents, and then there were addendums. So there were a few questions that sent to all the proponents, even if it was only 1 or 2 proponents asking. So
Yep.
Addendums, and there was a timeline for that as well. I didn't really. I have to actually go back and give you like a more accurate answer. But yeah, it was probably 2-3 months. But it was a very good learning process, and we really haven't done like a 2-step process where you do an RFQ, and the focus is mainly on on the qualification, the local experience, indigenous projects experience, and that kind of things, and the team itself. And then the second part is the bigger focus is on the fee, right? The fee quoted.
Yeah.
Request for proposal. So I think that this two-step process was elaborate. I don't know if we would like to do it for every project because it is time consuming in a way, but it is very efficient in that sense. And I think like I said, the other part is once you have a professional team that has received the award and is the successful proponent, then you are basically finalizing a contract with them, and so that again can be split into two parts. So the first would be like an internal service contract that identifies a very specific scope, work plan, and timeline. And then the second part, when it goes to detailed designing, actually can be more of the CCDC type of a project that also outlines, the vision, construction, and so yeah. So that's another, that's something to, but it was a very good experience, and I think GFN has been using, or like our own documents as well as CCDC contracts. So it's great.
What we can do, I wouldn't mind, because I notice our time, if we can follow up on that, because I have a couple questions and we can follow up on Wednesday, but just give us some idea on Wednesday, a little bit of the scope of the project and some more of the pitfalls of not using that. So if we could on Wednesday carry up with that.
Possibly, I'll just check if any of that is like I just want to make sure that nothing is confidential information. So yeah, definitely.
Or even in broader sense, but I find,
yeah,
excellent.
Oh, absolutely, yes.
All right, why don't we leave it at there, and we'll follow up on Wednesday, and we'll continue. All right, thanks everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.